Hello, everybody. Welcome into the Fantasy Pros Dynasty Football Podcast. I'm Ryan Wormeli, joined by Scott Bogman and Pat Fitzmaurice. Fellas, thank you for holding down the fort without me last week. I had shoulder surgery last week, as you guys know. And as I mentioned, doing the cycle on the baseball feed with Maye yesterday. So I obviously was not doing any shows last week because I was in recovery. Still will be in recovery for several weeks. You might notice if you're watching on YouTube that I am not moving my right arm at all. It's all left-handed for the show today. I am trying to make it through the episode without my sling on, but definitely will not be moving the arm too much. So I appreciate you guys, like I said, holding down the fort without me. How was last week's episode, Bogman?
I thought it was pretty good, but of course we did miss you, and we were, gave you a shout out to see how you're doing, and you don't seem like Aaron Rodgers on the goofballs at all. So you look cool and collected. So we like it.
Yeah, they were very, this is not my first surgery, and they like really emphasized, they're like, your pain needs to be at a pretty high level to take the like heavy duty meds that we prescribe to you. Then I try to abide by that like a responsible person. So it's mostly been Tylenol for the last several days here, which isn't messing with me too much. Fitz, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing well, Worm. And so with the Tylenol, I'm guessing maybe the shoulder is causing you less pain than the half-court buzzer beater that beat your Maryland Terrapins the other night.
Oh, my.
Sorry.
Kick a guy while he's down, why don't you?
Yeah, in the shoulder, too.
I was thinking of you in that moment, Worm. That I knew that had to be a rough one for you when you're already in recovery from the shoulder procedure.
I'd be afraid of
yeah,
moving because
if it had been the reverse, I would accidentally jump up and raise my hand. My parents have kind of alternated being in town to help me out with some of this early days of recovery, which I really appreciate. And so my mom's here, and she was like, had me set up with a bunch of ice on the shoulder, kind of sitting on the couch, not supposed to move at all, and just like had to watch me watch that play out and not be able to move. I couldn't even really react because I was like stuck icing the shoulder in the moment. It was a very, very dark moment that we don't need to spend any more time on. We are talking today some Dynasty rankings, kind of continuing this series, checking in on some of our rankings and some of Fantasy Pros' consensus rankings. We've done running backs already. We've done wide receivers already. Today, we're going to combine quarterbacks and tight ends together. As a reminder for everybody, all of our 2025 consensus rankings and tiers can be found at fantasypros.com/rankings. From there, you can navigate to the Dynasty rankings as well. I do want to also let everybody know that this month, if you want a chance to win a signed Aaron Jones Vikings jersey for free, courtesy of our friends at pristineauction.com, all you have to do is subscribe to the Fantasy Pros YouTube channel right now, drop a comment below on any Fantasy Pros Dynasty podcast video, and that's it. We'll be announcing a winner right here on the channel. So make sure to turn on those notifications so you can know when new videos are up and to claim your prize. Fellas, we're going to start on the quarterback side. I told you this already, but I'm only using my left hand, and I've never used my left hand on a mouse before this. So I might be like kind of navigating around the show sheet a little slower. Bear with me, please. I appreciate that. We're going to start at the very top of the quarterbacks, though. Boggs, thanks for putting these rankings together. Let's kind of start with, I would imagine most people view maybe tiers within this tier, but I think the top 5-ish is about tier 1, or at least the guys that you're not making a lot of cases for anybody below them to be inside the top 5. It's Josh Allen at 1, Lamar Jackson at 2, Jayden Daniels at 3, Joe Burrow at 4, Jalen Hurts at 5. That's the consensus in terms of ECR on Fantasy Pros. It also aligns with what you guys have, slightly different orders between that, but in terms of those being the 5 names at the top. So before we get into the order of that, Fitz, just kind of confirming, this is the clear top 5, right? There's not a case you want to make for anybody else?
Yeah, I think so. It's just a matter of how we order them. And I know where Boggs and I differ is that I've got Jayden Daniels number 1. He's got Lamar Jackson number 1. And we both have Josh Allen number 2.
Interestingly, like I mentioned, Josh Allen is number 1 in terms of the expert consensus on ECR. You guys both disagree with that, but obviously have him 2. I think the thing with Allen is just that like nobody's going to have him lower than 2, I would imagine, like on any ranking. Like this is a perfect example. Your mileage might vary in terms of you might like Jayden Daniels better, you might like Lamar Jackson better, but nobody has Allen like, low in a way. You have some, I don't know, injury concerns about Daniels or something. I don't know. I think that feels really like a clear top 3, honestly, within the top 5. And then Burrow and Hurts, I might prefer Hurts. You guys both have Burrow. The consensus is Burrow, but those two as 4 and 5 seems pretty clear. Any like real takeaways, Bogman? I mean, not that I want to just like skip past this group, because obviously they're really exciting names if you have them on a super flex roster, but it feels pretty straightforward.
Yeah, I think so. And I think exactly what you said there at the end. Like the top three, little bit interchangeable. 4 and 5 have been pretty sturdy from, Fitz and I both having them the same. And I think the rankers mainly have Burrow at 4, Hurts at 5. That is pretty standard as it goes right now. What about if they ban the tush push? Worm, do you think if they ban it, does Hurts lose a little steam? Maybe you put Burrow over him?
I I don't know if I would make the switch in that case. It would be definitely a downgrade. For me, it's just I just if I'm looking at two guys that I think are close, one of them runs and one of them doesn't, I just
Sure.
can't bring myself to put the guy who doesn't run ahead. It's just such a high bar to clear to be the superior fantasy option. And Burrow can do it, right? We've seen him have
Well, we saw it this
amazing
year.
years, but
Yeah.
I'm just again, if I see them as close regardless, I'm always going to rank the guy who moves ahead. That's
Eh, That's understandable. I just, and they both, Burrow's been hurt. Jalen Hurts runs, which puts you more at risk. And the only reason I have Lamar ahead of Jayden Daniels is because the repeatability of these seasons that we've seen from Lamar and Josh Allen, right? That's why I have Jayden at 3. But the upside is insane, and I don't think that it's nuts that Fitz has Jayden Daniels as number 1. He's younger than both those guys, like you said, less mileage. He looked amazing this season, so yeah, I understand Jayden being at number 1. I just the consistency of those top 2 guys, I can't move them.
Yeah, Fitz, kind of as a last point on this group of the top 5. I think if there is an eyebrow raising ranking here, and I don't think there really is, but if there is one, it's having Jayden Daniels number 1, just because of the track record with Allen and Lamar. And it's not like those guys are old, right? They're just older than the really young Daniels. So just kind of to put a bow on this top 5, can you kind of make the case for why you have Jayden number 1?
Yeah, I mean, I think you can make the case for ordering the top 3 any which way. Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen were better fantasy scorers in 2024. Looking at fantasy points per game, and I'm going to exclude Week 18 here since Josh Allen and Jayden Daniels only played partial games. Excluding Week 18, Lamar Jackson averaged 25.7 fantasy points a game. Josh Allen 24.1. Jayden Daniels 22.5. So like there's a gap there, but I would contend that we're probably going to see an upgrade in Jayden Daniels' pass catching weaponry in the offseason. So in redraft, like I will have Jayden Daniels ranked behind Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson this year, but this is Dynasty. Daniels is 24. Jackson and Allen are both 28. Allen's going to be 29 in a few months. And did anything about Jayden Daniels' rookie season seem fluky to you guys? Like, I don't think so. But
No.
we could get some sophomore slippage. It happened with CJ Stroud, but I think you can blame the Stroud thing on terrible offensive line play. This combination of rushing and passing, like Jayden Daniels isn't a good running quarterback who is also a decent passer. Like he's a really good passer too, who is a prolific runner. So I'm really excited
Hurts
about
if
his
he could
future.
pass,
Yeah,
right?
pretty much. And I don't want to totally diss Hurts as a
Sure.
passer, but I do think Jayden Daniels is already a better passer than Jalen Hurts.
Same.
So the next group, I actually think it's really interesting because I don't want to just do 5 names. I really think the next like 9 or 10 names really is the most interesting part of the rankings because I think it's where you could have the most disagreement. It's where you could see the most movement in this upcoming season. Like the top 5, I'm reasonably confident, barring an injury, are going to be ranked really highly a year from now. The next 10, I could see some of those guys jumping into the top 5. I could see some of those guys falling out of the top 15. I could see within kind of that group of 6 to 14-ish guys jumping around a lot. It seems pretty malleable when I look at this list of names, to a degree because of question marks, to a degree because of just, we want to see what these situations look like a year from now. Looking way further down the list, a guy like Trevor Lawrence, what does he look like with Liam Cohen now as the head coach there? Looking higher, what does Bo Nix look like in year 2? What does Drake Maye look like if his situation improves? So there's just a lot of really interesting names here. So basically it's going to go from at 6 is Patrick Mahomes, then, and this is in our rankings, by the way, 6 is Patrick Mahomes, Drake Maye, Bo Nix, Justin Herbert, CJ Stroud. Then you get into Caleb Williams, Jordan Love, Brock Purdy, Kyler Murray, Trevor Lawrence. That's the next 10 names. I want to get to the rookies later on in this segment. To start, I want to actually ask at the very top here. Patrick Mahomes is the consensus best quarterback in football, yet he is not a top 5, and he is very much consensus not top 5. It's not like we are the outlier here. He's not top 5 in dynasty rankings. Bogman, is there a world where Mahomes gets back into that elite tier 1 dynasty quarterback status just because he's the best quarterback on the planet? Or are those days like officially like not coming back?
No, I think he could come back at any point. I'm not. I think you're foolish if you count out Patrick Mahomes because he's had 2 seasons that are subpar for him. Remember, this guy has thrown for over 5,000 yards in a season. He's had 50 touchdowns in a season. He's still one of the best quarterbacks in the league. They just, they have relied on their defense. They've had issues at pass catcher, a wide receiver, and then Travis Kelce wasn't great this year, and the O-line got wrecked in the Super Bowl, right? So they've had issues, and these issues have all kind of happened since Patrick Mahomes signed his extension and is eating up a big chunk of cap space for the Chiefs. And that was, the thing for Tom Brady was he always signed team-friendly deals so that they could sign some players. So I think that Mahomes getting back to it would not shock me at all, especially if the run game doesn't go the way that they think or expect it to go next year, and they get back to passing the ball a little bit more, which I frankly think they might need. So I'm not counting out Patrick Mahomes by any stretch of the imagination. It's just been 2 years of subpar for Mahomes. So, can you put him in there with those top 3 guys? I don't think you can right now, but I would absolutely not push him out of the top 10 at any point, I feel like.
Fitz, what do you think?
Yeah, kind of feel the same way. Just sort of a weird convergence of factors with some of the pass catching weaponry he has lost, having Marquise Brown go down before the season with an injury, having Rashee Rice lost for the year. Just when we were excited about the increase in pass catching weaponry, Xavier Worthy came on late, but really wasn't that impactful early in the season. The Chiefs defense, probably the best a Chiefs defense has played during the Mahomes era, which makes it a little less incumbent on him to have to throw a lot to win games. And also, this was probably the 2024 version of the Chiefs offensive line, also probably the worst of the Patrick Mahomes era. So we'll see, like with a little bit more pass catching weaponry and improvements on the offensive line, and maybe the defense takes a step back. I could see Mahomes go nuclear again. Thing is, he hasn't really been that impactful fantasy quarterback since the opening weeks of the 2023 season.
Yeah,
It's been a while.
Yeah, it has been a while. That's the thing. It's not like it's been one kind of down year. It's dipping into 2 years now with him. To me, the names that stand out the most as kind of the most fascinating in this group, and again, we'll get to the guys coming off their rookie seasons in a second. It's the other veterans. It's Justin Herbert, it's CJ Stroud, it's Jordan Love. Like those 3 alone, I think are really fascinating because a year from now, I could see any of them coming off a top 5 fantasy season. I could also see any of them coming off a season where they're like 21st, but just because of the circumstances and they didn't run for any touchdowns and it was just a poor year. Like they're obviously like pass first guys. They're really talented to varying degrees coming off interesting seasons. They're guys that, unlike the elites, and I think also unlike the guys coming off their rookie seasons who people are generally mostly excited about, I think these guys are tradable. Like there are deals you could craft for these guys and get a lot of value, but it's not like anybody's looking to get rid of them either. I just find them to be really kind of in an interesting area entering the 2025 season. Fitz, how would you kind of rank, not in terms of your dynasty ranking, but in terms of the guys you think could take the biggest leap this year? Just those 3, Herbert, Stroud, and Love.
I expect Stroud to take a big step back. I mean, he had a sophomore slump, but I think there were circumstances that tied into that. The Texans allowed 54 sacks this year. That was tied for 3rd most in the league. And they allowed pressure on 26.9% of Stroud's dropbacks. That was the highest pressure rate allowed in the league this year. The Nico Collins, Stephon Diggs, Tank Dell trio that we were all excited about for Stroud, they missed, I think, something like 17 combined games. So it was kind of a rough go for Stroud this year, but this is a dude who threw for 4,100 yards as a rookie and had a 1% interception rate. Like, I don't think that rookie season was a fluke. I just think it's really easy to trace Stroud's year 2 struggles to that raggedy offensive line.
What about you, Bogman? The same three names: Herbert, Stroud, Love.
Yeah, I think what Fitz just said about Stroud is absolutely correct. I think he concerns me probably the most out of this group because the offensive line had the issues. He also did not look as sharp as he did his rookie season. We're changing offensive coordinators now for this whole system, which is weird. Diggs is a UFA. Tank Dell's probably never going to be the same. So what do we do to address pass catcher for CJ Stroud, I think, and the offensive line? So two big pieces of the offense need to be fixed immediately. In terms of Jordan Love, I think it's just kind of steady Eddie, right? I think the floor is insanely high for him. I think there's more. I think there's meat on the bone for him, but I just don't know if we're going to get it because the Packers run the ball so much. That is the system. Same thing with Justin Herbert, right? Like, I think Justin Herbert far and away is the best quarterback of this trio, but this is going to be a run first Harbaugh offense, Jim Harbaugh offense, right? So it's going to be run first. They have one great pass catcher in Ladd McConkey, but we also need to add talent around him. And I mean, I would love to see Herbert run more, but he has missed so much time with injuries in the past, not necessarily because of running, but the rib thing against Kansas City a couple years ago, the ankle at the beginning of this season in 2024. I think for that reason, we don't see him run more. But, if they wanted to pass the ball at a rate like the Bills do, I think Justin Herbert's stock would fly. I just don't think we're going to get that in a Harbaugh type offense.
Let's get into these guys coming off their rookie seasons because I think it's a really interesting debate. Back to back, we have Drake Maye and Bo Nix. A couple spots lower is Caleb Williams. Obviously, Caleb was the more highly touted guy going into the 2024 season. I am still very much not out on Caleb. Obviously, I love the play caller upgrade he's going to get with Ben Johnson. Clearly, we all believe in the talent. You guys can talk about him if you want. The more interesting in terms of a debate, though, I think, especially given where you guys have these players ranked, is Drake Maye versus Bo Nix. I will just say right off the bat, I am somebody who is siding on Drake Maye. I am very willing to be wrong on that, but I am going to bet a lot on a big fantasy season from Drake Maye this year. I just think the running is so appetizing for dynasty managers and for even if you're in a redraft next year. I will be very heavily invested in Drake Maye. You disagree, Bogman, on that. You are more on the Bo Nix side. So why do you see it differently?
Yeah, and by the way, I have them at 7 and 8.
Yeah, they're close. I'm not saying you see a wide gap, but
yeah, exactly. So I'm not this is one where I'm not oh, I have to have Bo Nix ahead of Drake Maye or anything. I was just well, what do we have, right? For these teams. And remember, I am more of the short window guy, even in Dynasty, the 3 years. So we saw a great year from Bo Nix, way better than any of us expected. We saw Marvin Mims come on at the end of the season. Cortland Sutton and Bo Nix work so great together. And I just think Sean Payton has this team rolling right now. And they did this all without a decent run game as well. So and he averaged, I think it was some ridiculous 6 more points per game. Yeah, 19.3 points to 13.4 points for Bo Nix over Drake Maye this year. And I'm not trying to, I think Drake Maye is a better quarterback. I'm not saying that the skill of Bo Nix is better, but I think what we have in Denver is already proven. We've already seen it. So now let's see some upgrades to it. The O-line gelled together. Let's get a good running game in Denver and see how this whole offense opens up. This is Bo Nix's first year. With Drake Maye, the skill is amazing. Like I said, I do think he's a better quarterback than Bo Nix. They have nothing. They have no offensive line. It is miserable. They need 5 replacements this year. I don't know if we're going to get them. The skill positions are awful. One of the worst in the league at wide receiver. Tight end, Hunter Henry's fine, but he's aging. And the run game, Stevenson fumbled so many times at the end of the year, he got benched. So I hate the health of the Patriots offense. So I have Bo Nix 1 spot ahead of him. This could easily flip next year. We've seen, big changes happen all the time in one season. So maybe this will be different. But it's not like Drake Maye didn't play any games compared to Bo Nix. He got into 14 games. And, Bo Nix, of course, started the whole season. The rushing upside is better for Drake Maye. There's no doubt about it in my mind. But I don't know. The offense is better for Denver. We might see more rushing touchdowns from Bo Nix simply because the offense is better. So I think in a short, tight window, these guys are right next to each other, but I would have Bo Nix a little bit higher because he is proof of concept. We saw it. He was outstanding this year.
Fitz, I've already kind of mentioned that Drake Maye is something of a flag plant of mine in terms of these rankings. Like, again, I'm very willing to kind of stake a lot of my, dynasty teams on what I expect to be an increase in value this year. You also have him a few spots ahead of Bo Nix, so you're more aligned with me on that. I do want to ask, though, before you kind of dive into why you have him ranked where you do, if the Patriots draft Abdul Carter or Travis Hunter or somebody who is not an offensive lineman, or maybe like Ted McMillan with that early pick this year, will that change how you are evaluating Maye? Because I am actually putting stock into, I know they need more than just one player to fix some of the surrounding cast, but I am expecting them to get kind of a blue chip guy, at least one, to take a step towards that at the top of this draft. If they don't, if they just go BPA and it's a defender, I will feel differently a little bit about Maye.
They have the most cap space too, just to throw that.
Sure.
It's like 128 million, so they can pay.
Yeah.
And a bevy of draft capital, picking it fourth in every round. So no, I'm not going to worry if player 104 in the NFL draft is not an offensive lineman or a wide receiver, because they have the ammunition in free agency and the draft to upgrade other ways than with just that 104 pick. So all right, let me preface this by saying I like Bo Nix. I think all those games he started in college helped him hit the ground running with the Broncos, and the Bo Nix Sean Payton pairing has worked really well so far. Granted, Nix was a better fantasy score than Drake Maye was last season, although Boggs, I want to push back a little bit on your numbers. So Nix did average 19.3 fantasy points per game, although if you take out that week 18 game where the Chiefs and their backups basically laid down for the Broncos and Nix had a 33-point game or whatever, his average falls to 18.4. And the 13 point whatever number for Maye, that's including like cameo appearances.
Oh yeah, I forgot. He got in like at the end of
games.
Yeah,
if you look at his starts, he was at, and excluding week 18 when he played a partial game, he was at 16.8 fantasy points per game.
Right there.
And scored, so about a point and a half worse, 1.7 points worse per game than Nix if you exclude week 18 for both guys. And Maye did score at least 17.7 fantasy points in 7 of his 11 starts. So here's the thing. I mean, you said it, Boggs. The supporting cast was awful. Bad offensive line, terrible wide receivers. It was like they made a bunch of sequels to the movie Jaws. I think there were 3 of them, the original, and they kept getting progressively worse. So you can imagine how bad Jaws 4 was. Well, somehow they got Michael Caine to star in Jaws 4. Michael Caine, like one of the best actors of his generation, trying to salvage this horrible movie that never should have been made. Drake Maye was Michael Caine in Jaws 4 last season. Just this superb actor in a ridiculous production. But now the Patriots do have all this. They have the means to dramatically upgrade the supporting cast for Michael Caine. I mean, Drake Maye this coming off season. So Maye's 22 years old. I mean, he played most of his rookie season at age 21, and a solid season as a passer last year, despite highly adverse circumstances. Brings a lot of rushing value to the table, as you mentioned, Boggs. I think Drake Maye is just an absolute cornerstone asset in Dynasty Superflex.
He's younger than everybody we're going to talk about today besides JJ McCarthy. He's younger than the rookies coming in, everybody.
Yeah, he's unbelievably young. And like I said, I do think he is the better quarterback. So much changing though, right? It's your head coach changes, your OC changes. Like there's so much flipping in this offense. Plus, you should have with 128 million in the cap. You should have so many new teammates as well. So how quick does that gel in year one? Again, shorter window for me. I'll lean on what we saw from Bo Nix, but we could easily see a CJ Stroud slide from the term sophomore slump is there for a reason, right? It happens to a lot of people. So 7 and 8, I could easily be on your guys' side by week 6.
I feel so strongly about it. I will say this. If you asked me to pick one guy outside the top 5 who was going to finish in the top 5 next year, it probably wouldn't be Maye. But if you asked me to pick one guy outside the top 5 who's going to finish as QB1 next year, I might pick Maye. I think the ceiling, the likelihood of reaching the ceiling is lower than some of these other guys. I genuinely believe the ceiling is that high, in a way that I don't think it is for a lot of the other names that aren't in the top 5. That's how much of a believer I am. Before we get out of this section, I do just want to quickly ask kind of those last 2 names I mentioned when I was reading all 10 of them. Kyler Murray and Trevor Lawrence, they feel kind of like tied at the hip a bit just because they're kind of in a similar boat in terms of like haven't really put it all together. Like Kyler said some injury stuff. Trevor just hasn't looked as good as maybe we expected. Obviously a new coaching staff now in Jacksonville. I would prefer to have on my dynasty roster Trevor Lawrence over Kyler Murray. You guys both have it close, but the other way. You guys both have Kyler ranked slightly higher. So make the case just quickly here. Convince me, Fitz, why I should have Kyler ahead of Trevor.
I can't. To me, they're pretty much, very little separation there. I mean, I feel like you get more certainty with Kyler as a runner, but like, I don't know. We have not seen Trevor Lawrence turn the corner yet, and if he can't do it this year, if he can't do it with Liam Cohen as his quarterback whisperer, if he can't do it with a full season of Brian Thomas and Evan Engram, his security blanket back, and Christian Kirk back from injury, like if he cannot do it this year, I think we are going to see his dynasty stock just plummet, obviously, because like it's all pointing to this year, and it will be colossally disappointing. Like we've kept making excuses for Trevor Lawrence. I think he's pretty much out of excuses if 2025 doesn't go well for him.
I do firmly agree with that. By the way, this is a last chance, but I believe he will step up to the task in this kind of, again, like year 2 of Brian Thomas Jr. and Liam Cohen. Those 2 kind of elements alone are enough for me to say I want to have Trevor Lawrence on my teams this year.
Is there anyone that has been set back more in the beginning of their career than Trevor Lawrence, right? Like you have Urban Meyer as your first head coach, who was a complete joke. And then Doug Peterson, obviously came off a Super Bowl win and all of that, but no one really believed in him. That's why he got hired late in the process and everything. And I do think Liam Cohen is going to unlock him a little bit, but we have to see it from Trevor, right? Like that's really the thing. We've seen it from Kyler. He has good pieces as well, and McBride, and we didn't even see the peak of Marvin Harrison, or even halfway of what I feel like Marvin Harrison can get to. The running game is good. They re-signed James Conner. They have Trey Benson. Like the pieces are great around Kyler Murray, and he has a track record. Trevor Lawrence has the pieces around him, but the coaches have been awful. And here we go again with another new head coach and OC and all of this stuff for Trevor Lawrence. And I'm with Fitz. Like, let the kid run. He had more rushing yards than Justin Fields their last year in college. The dude can run. Let him do it. And they just don't let him do it. So hopefully, when we saw Baker Mayfield running last year, imagine if Trevor Lawrence takes some of those carries. I think Trevor Lawrence has huge upside. I will say this, where I'm just to the guy that I would put at that number 1 spot outside of the top 10 here. Caleb with Ben Johnson this year and Rome Odunze. And I am so excited about because the Bears own line, if you look at like PFF grades, if you buy into that stuff, line was pretty good. It was Caleb Williams holding the ball. So getting him competent coaching and hopefully, fixing some of these issues, Caleb still has all of the upside. So there's a lot of meat on the bone there.
I'm glad you said that, because I actually, when I said what I said about Drake Maye, the name I was looking at that I was like, if I want to dial this back a bit and pick a different name, Caleb was the guy I was thinking about. So I definitely agree with you there. Yeah, I mean, like I said, I think that's a really fascinating kind of stretch of names there. So we'll go a little bit quicker kind of on the back end.
Before we get off the young QBs, can I just ask Bogman about something? Bogman, why JJ McCarthy over Michael Penix? I have strong feelings on this one.
Well, this is because of what we saw Sam Darnold do in a Kevin O'Connell offense, right? And the fact that you have Addison, you have Hockenson, you have Justin Jefferson, one of the best wide receivers in the league. They pass the ball 1 million times a game. I think that if you're dropping JJ McCarthy in there, which I think is what's going to end up happening, I think someone's going to pay Sam Darnold too much for the Vikings to do it. They invested the first round pick. Like this should be McCarthy's team in 2025. I just the system is there. He got to sit and learn for a year. Hopefully, the injury is obviously what we're going to worry about, right? Is he going to be the same guy? Is he going to be able to run like he did in college as well? So there are questions there. But with this offense and those weapons around him for the foreseeable future, I mean, they made Sam Darnold, who looked like garbage everywhere else, look like a Pro Bowler, right? So I think McCarthy's future is great if he is the starter in Minnesota and sticks.
I'm guessing, Fitz, you're going to make this point, but situation's pretty good in Atlanta too.
It is.
It is very good. And I agree, like having Kevin O'Connell as your play caller, having Jefferson and Addison to throw to, it's great. But I do think JJ McCarthy was he was sort of a projection as a pick, right? I mean, he never put up great numbers at Michigan. He didn't have to because of the circumstances with on a team that won a lot, was often up big in
Defense
the second
and
half,
run.
didn't need to throw, great defense. And the tools are fantastic. But like Penix, we actually saw do it last year. I don't think there's a chance in hell that Penix is ever jealous of McCarthy's arm talent. Like Penix his arm talent is insane. And the other secret sauce for Penix is sack avoidance. The dude just does not take sacks. And you might be thinking, who cares? Sacks don't matter in fantasy, except they do matter. Like sacks short circuit drives and take the ball out of a quarterback's hands. And avoiding sacks is one of the keys to sustaining drives. So, I mean, sack avoidance helped Penix pile up crazy stats at Washington. The dude averaged 340 passing yards a game over his final 2 college seasons. Now, he's not going to average 340 a game in the NFL, but I do think there are future seasons where Penix Jr. is going to be at or near the top of the leaderboard in passing yardage.
Penix is also never going to run. And I don't know, coming off the injury, I don't know how stunted McCarthy's running is going to be, but he has that in the tool bag for sure.
By now, most of you have probably heard of Reality Sports Online, the powerful fantasy sports platform where owners get to build and manage their fantasy team like an NFL general manager. But the question is, have you tried it? It's time to go see what all the buzz in the Dynasty community is about. Free agency, multi-year contracts, a rookie draft, multi-team trades, franchise tags, contract extensions, first-round rookie options, automated contract and salary cap functionality, and much, much more. I think it sounds complicated. It's not. The best thing about Reality Sports Online Fantasy Front Office is that it doesn't take any more time than a standard league. It just requires more strategy. Think you're among the fantasy elite? Well, this is the platform to test your mettle. Still not sure? You can test out your general manager skills for free in a mock free agency auction. If you like what you see, use promo code FantasyPros to receive a 10% discount on your team or league today. That's promo code FantasyPros to receive a 10% discount on your team or league today. Fantasy just got real at realitysportsonline.com. All right, guys, we'll jump into kind of the back half of our quarterback rankings here. Fitz already jumped the gun on the next 2 names, so we'll move past Penix and McCarthy. The young names continue, though, in this stretch. We have Cam Ward, Jared Goff, who's not young, then Bryce Young and Anthony Richardson. So if you loop in Penix and McCarthy into that too, 5 of the next 6 names after that top 15 are guys who are young, experienced, who have, some of them have had some struggles. But again, we already talked about Penix and McCarthy. So out of guys like Ward, who's obviously an incoming rookie, Bryce Young, who had this really fun to watch bounce back in the second half of last season, but obviously had a horrific rookie season. Anthony Richardson, who was ranked very highly in Dynasty rankings going into last year and has fallen quite a bit. When you look at those young names, and I know we haven't seen Ward play an NFL game yet, but Bogman, how do you parse through Ward, Young, and Richardson? And we'll kind of skip past Goff because we all kind of know what he is at this point.
Yeah, I think this is the hardest stretch to rank, right? Because what do we do with Anthony Richardson? He looks so miserable. Is he in this group here? Because he kind of is for me. He's kind of not for Fitz. Bryce Young looked so good at the end of the year, but his whole stretch before the end was miserable. So Anthony Richardson type bad, right? So do we think it all clicked and we're good to go here? Where does Cam Ward end up? What does that look like? Does he start immediately? Is he like the number 1 overall pick to Tennessee? Does he go to Cleveland? Does he go a little bit later? Maybe the Giants. And then, like you said, Goff in here is kind of whatever. It's just, Goff has a high floor because of what the Lions are.
Well, actually, sorry to cut you off, but maybe I
Sure.
shouldn't have skipped past Goff because we don't know what he's going to look like without Ben Johnson. It hasn't been pretty in the past when he hasn't had an elite play caller. Does that kind of work? If you're a win now team, because obviously like a rebuilding team, you're probably not investing in Goff anyway.
Right.
If you're a win now team, are you maybe looking to move Goff just given some of that uncertainty, or is the infrastructure just too good?
I don't hate it. I think because it is a concern, right? I think it is a concern. You don't have McVay, you don't have Ben Johnson, you don't have one of these elite level play callers. So are you going to be able to do it? I just think he's so experienced at this point in his career. He's probably going to be fine. I think the floor is insanely high. Like you said, the supporting cast is crazy around him. So it would take a huge step back for him to fail. So I think he's going to be okay here. But the other guys, and you can throw in Shedeur into this. You could throw in probably Tua as well. Young guys with, where is Shedeur going to land? How long is that going to last? Is he going to be able to fix these issues that he had in college of, dropping back and taking sacks? Because we saw how big that damage was to the Bears with Caleb Williams this season, right? So I think you can poke holes in everybody. I think there's a lot of upside with these young players as well. Like it's kind of hard to parse them all out because I still have Anthony Richardson fairly high. I don't think we're completely done with him. He is in an open competition with whoever. We have seen that from the scouting combine. Talking to why did I just forget his name? Steichen. Talking to Steichen. He's going to be in a competition. But if he wins that, the upside is still insanely high. This guy only had, the 1 year starting full time in college. So he might need reps. That might be the biggest thing for him. And his upside is insane. There were people that had him in the top 5 last year. And obviously that was a mistake. But I think this is tough to parse through. So it's kind of pick your poison. My poison is I want the upside. So I have Richardson high. I have Ward high. I have, Penix in that mix and Bryce Young as well. So I like the upside still.
Yeah, Fitz, I'm if you have anything you want to kind of weigh in on any of these other names, I'm curious your opinion, but I am especially curious to hear what you think about Richardson this year.
Yeah, I had him like 5 spots higher a couple of weeks ago. And hearing Chris Ballard, the Colts general manager, say that it's going to be an open competition really disappointed me because we knew Anthony Richardson was going to be a project coming out of college. He just hadn't started that many games at the college level. So he was going to need seasoning. And the fact that they pulled the plug midway through last season and benched him for Flacco. And who knows how long that might have lasted if Flacco hadn't gone into Joe Flacco mode and started throwing multiple interceptions every game. So it's like, I feel like the Colts are maybe not the right spot for him with how impatient they have been. And it kind of concerns me. Like I still believe in the player and the potential value with his running ability and the arm strength he has. But, yeah, and
he's still 3 days older than Cam Ward and
Yep.
a year younger or a couple months younger than Shedeur Sanders. So he's got time. And like you said, maybe it's not on the Colts, but then now you're looking at a Sam Darnold type of career path. That sucks.
And Boggs and I are on the opposite end of the Cam Ward versus Shedeur Sanders debate. I don't want to hear about Shedeur Sanders taking sacks, Boggs. He played behind a garbage offensive line. Cam Ward is the guy who will sit there holding the ball for like 5 seconds.
Yeah.
And like Shedeur, I think, is like trying to work through his progressions, everything, and will check down. Cam Ward does not ever want to check down. My fear is that Cam Ward is Jameis Winston. He is always looking for the big play. He is always playing hero ball, and that scares the heck out of me.
Yeah, he's got ice in his veins. So he's not backing out and rolling out and taking sacks, but he'll sit in the pocket too long and take a sack and, like you said, fumble on occasion. So, I think
more than occasion, dude, he's had 2 college seasons where he had more fumbles than games started. 2.
Yeah, I think that, look, I think these are coachable things, right? I think you can coach these things out. Sometimes you can't. Sometimes you get Jameis, who's just, when he's amazing and he's on, and when he's bad, he's bad, and there's just no coaching it out of it. So I just think that both of these guys, no one comes in the NFL complete. And I think Cam Ward, a lot of this stuff can be coached out of him, but you are right. Like, I think that there's a chance that they can't be, but give me the upside all day. I think there's just more upside for Cam Ward than there is for Shedeur Sanders. So I'm going to bank on it when I have them close.
We got to go quickly on the last names here because we still have to get to the tight ends. But the last names rounding out the top 30 in the rankings, Baker Mayfield, Shedeur Sanders, who we already talked about, Tua Tagovailoa, Dak Prescott, Sam Darnold, Justin Fields, Jackson Dart, another incoming rookie, Matthew Stafford, and Geno Smith. The guy who is the widest gap between your two rankings combined versus the expert consensus rankings of Fantasy Pros is Dak Prescott. He's 6.5 spots higher on average in the ECR than he is for you two. Why do you think there's a gap there, Fitz?
I don't know.
A little bit has to be because not everybody has updated their rankings with rookies, right? I think that's a little bit of it in ECR. But that could be like 3 or 4 guys though.
To put actual numbers on it, it's your guys' kind of average ranking between the two of you is 24.5. Fitz has him 25, Bogman gave him 24. He's 18th in ECR.
So, I mean, older, coming off the injury, just don't know what the window of like productive years is for Dak Prescott at this point. I mean, I like him. If I'm a contending team and I've got him in Superflex Dynasty, I'm not looking to deal him. It's just if you're in a rebuild, Dak Prescott should not be on your roster.
Any other quick thoughts on this group? Bogman, anybody stand out to you that you want to hit on before we wrap up the quarterbacks?
I would like to see where Sam Darnold ends up to get a proper ranking on him. Same thing with Justin Fields. Like, Justin Fields could be a starter this year. And, if he goes to the Jets, maybe he's a starter. You know what I mean? So I think these guys, there's a lot of movement that can happen down here, specifically with the rookies in their landing spot as well. So
if you guys have questions on players we didn't get to amongst the quarterbacks, I want to let everybody know that you can join our Fantasy Pros Discord community. You can chat with other fans and get access to exclusive AMAs that wind up on our podcast feed. Our current schedule looks like this: myself and Fitz at 5 Eastern on the first Tuesday of each month, and then Fitz and Bogman together at 5 Eastern on the third Tuesday of each month. Come get your questions answered and be on the show at fantasypros.com/chat. And of course, those guys are always in their own channels on there anyway. So if you've got a question about, how are we going to evaluate Matthew Stafford, depending on where he lands, or whoever it is, Justin Fields, given his landing spot, you can go ahead and ask us those questions on there if we didn't get to them on the show. And when I say we, it's Fitz and Bogman are on Discord answering your questions all the time. All right, guys, let's get to the tight ends here. We'll have to go a little bit quicker on them, which I think is okay because the back half of the tight end rankings are like not really that appealing in terms of dynasty anyway. Let's start at the top though. We're not going to waste any time on Brock Bowers. He's number one. Everybody has him number one. Don't waste time trying to make the case for anybody else.
I mean, he did all of this with horrible quarterback play and coaching.
Yes.
So
and being younger than everybody else on this list.
Age 21 for most of his rookie year. Just incredible.
Just don't even. Again, I'm not even.
This is the original Brock Bowers podcast. This one right here. So we don't need to keep talking about.
I'm not even going to insult you guys by asking you to just to play devil's advocate and make a case for somebody else. There is no case. Brock Bowers is tight end one. I would personally say that is also true for 2 and 3. You guys have it ranked that way. Do you think I'm correct that it is as definitive as Brock Bowers at 1 that Trey McBride is tight end 2 and Sam Laporta is tight end 3? Because I do see it I don't want to say they're like their own tiers, but I do see it as very clearly. I'm not really willing to make a case for any order other than Bowers 1, McBride 2, and Laporta 3. Fitz, do you see 2 and 3 differently at all?
No, I agree. I mean, I do worry about the paucity of touchdowns that we've seen from Trey McBride. Like, he has had 192 catches over the last 2 seasons with only 5 touchdowns. He never had more than 4 touchdowns in any of his college seasons at Colorado State, where he wasn't exactly facing big-time competition. I mean, in his final season at CSU, McBride had 90 catches and 1,100 yards and only 1 touchdown that came in the final game of his college career. Like, he does have this touchdown allergy. It's kind of a thing with him, but I mean, he's just such a prolific target and reception hog that easy number 2. Yes.
I don't think there's anything in my life that I would say is more guaranteed than Brock Bowers being number 1 on my dynasty tight end list. So in that respect, it's not close, but you're absolutely correct. It's tier 1 is Bowers, tier 2 is McBride and Laporta, and that is that. I will not listen to an argument.
So I'm not going to reveal who's number 4. I want you guys to each make the case for whoever you have at tight end 4. Because again, we're all in lockstep on 1, 2, and 3. There is start to get some disagreement when you get beyond that. So Bogman, you can go first. Whoever you have at tight end 4, make the case.
Yeah, it's Tyler Warren, the incoming rookie from Penn State for me. And we just saw him catch 104 balls for 1,233 yards. He had 8 touchdowns. He also added 26 rushes for 218 yards and 4 touchdowns. In college, he was, just like Trey McBride at Colorado State, where everyone knows it's coming and you still can't stop it. But this was at an elite level at Penn State in the Big Ten in the playoff. No one can stop Tyler Warren. He's going to be drafted extremely high. He's going to become an immediate, probably at least number 2 receiving option for whatever team he lands on. And you can use him on all kinds of weird trick plays like Penn State did and run him at the goal line. Like, this guy has so much upside. He's crazy young. I don't mean to insult George Kittle, but he is 9 years younger than George Kittle. There's going to just be so much runway for this guy too. Tight end is a tough position. Things like Brock Bowers being amazing immediately don't happen at this position a lot. So there is that curve, which is why I don't, this is not the stone cold lock, like you said, Worm, about the top 3 guys. But I think just the youth and the crazy amount of upside he has, I got to have him at 4.
Well, Fitz, Bogman already gave away who your tight end 4 is, so go ahead and make the case for Kittle as tight end 4.
Yeah, it's Kittle because, Boggs, misrepresenting himself as the short window guy in fantasy dynasty formats and passing up George Kittle, who just, churns out 1,000-yard, double-digit touchdown seasons. No, I mean, Kittle is just, I know he's getting older, but he's aging really well. And he is just such a huge impact player. I mean, he is as impactful right now as Brock Bowers and Trey McBride. And yeah, I mean, like, I'm willing to sign up for another 2 or 3 years of that. I know he doesn't have the long runway that a Tyler Warren does, but just to push back on the Warren thing a little bit, like, I'm pumping the brakes a little on him because he's an older prospect and he did not blow up until he was a 5th-year senior when Tyler Warren was 22 years old. Like, he was the oldest guy on the field for most of his final year at Penn State, playing against 19 and 20-year-olds. Before his 5th season, his 5th-year senior season, Tyler Warren's single-season highs in college were 34 catches, 422 yards. So I like him. I think he deserves to go in the first half of the first round of the NFL draft, but like, I don't know if he's instantly going to become the next George Kittle, even though his playing style is a lot like George Kittle. He does rampage through defenses when he has the ball, and he is really fun to watch. But I think there's a good chance Colston Loveland is just as good, if not better.
So you guys had the same 3 at 4, 5, and 6, just in different orders, and we haven't mentioned one of them yet. One of them is Kittle. One of them is Tyler Warren. The other is TJ Hockenson. What did you see in kind of his return from injury, Bogman, that has you keeping him kind of inside that top 6 of the position in Dynasty?
Yeah, it's hard to have him down at 6. I think that the top 6 are so unbelievably good at tight end. And but for me, it's just, okay, we do have the question at quarterback. Like, if we're going to McCarthy, how does McCarthy look with Hockenson? I'm assuming it's going to be fine, but you have Addison, you have Jefferson, you have a lot of weapons here. The run game was bad. We're thinking about adding a running back. Some mocks have, Travion Henderson or a running back going to the Vikings. So maybe they rely on the run game a little bit more, but Hockenson is so good. He definitely deserved to be in here. And, if not for the injury, he probably would have been my 4. So just a great talent and probably the best value outside of, I'll still take Bowers at 1, but the outside of him, the best value I think might be Hockenson at tight end 6 here.
Fitz, just quick thoughts on Hockenson.
Yeah, I debated whether to put him ahead of or after the top two rookies, Warren and Loveland, who I've got. I've got Warren and Loveland at 6 and 7. I did put Hockenson ahead of them just because at his peak, Hockenson has just been so good. And I know there are issues like having to share targets with Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison, having to work with a first time starting quarterback in the NFL, presumably if the Vikings don't re-sign Sam Darnold. But yeah, I mean, I think we're going to see something more along the lines of vintage TJ Hockenson now that he is further removed from that devastating knee injury.
You guys, very interestingly, so 1, 2, and 3, you agree on. 4, 5, and 6, same names, but jump up the order for each of you. Tight end 7, tight end 8, tight end 9, tight end 10, tight end 11, and tight end 12. You guys agree on every one of those names. Those names in order: Colston Loveland, Tucker Kraft, Mark Andrews, David Njoku, Kyle Pitts, and Dalton Kincaid. Now, FantasyPros expert consensus rankings disagrees with that a little, at least in terms of the specific order. But for you two, you are in lockstep. Again, it's Loveland at 6, Kraft at 7, Loveland at 7, Kraft at 8, Andrews at 9, Njoku at 10, Pitts at 11, and Kincaid at tight end 12. With anybody in this group, Fitz, if that tight end is on your roster, are you going into this season thinking this is a position I need to upgrade? Are you thinking this is a position that I'm just kind of set and maybe it's uninspiring depending on the name, but I at least have a guy and I'm not worried about it? Or are you thinking like this is a serious need on my dynasty roster that I want to get a second one of these guys, or I want to package one of these guys with somebody else to get up into that top 6? Do you see wide gap there?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're probably feeling restless if you've got any of these guys as your top tight end. Loveland is the exception at 7 because he's a young guy. Kraft, maybe you're feeling okay about, but you probably want a decent number 2 tight end. Andrews is getting older. Njoku is getting older. Kyle Pitts, I mean, we'll see if Michael Penix Jr. can resuscitate him, but it didn't really happen last year. In the 3 starts Penix made, I think Kyle Pitts had like 66 yards. So, and Kincaid.
Fitz. We can't do Pitts again. We
I know. Trust me.
We still have him as a tight end 1.
We got to put a moratorium on like Kyle Pitts mentions for this offseason.
I know.
Yeah, but you know what's going to happen, Worm. As soon as we all forget about him, Pro Bowl year. Like that's exactly how it works.
Best of luck.
But let's let it happen.
Does Dalton Kincaid belong in the Kyle Pitts category just yet? Like last year was supposed to be his.
It hasn't happened enough times yet. Like you've gotten like maybe one for first degree burn from him. It hasn't been like burned all over your body the way Kyle Pitts is. You didn't jump into the flames like you did with Kyle Pitts, but I mean, through the last season, at least trending that direction, possibly.
Yeah, it's his 2024 was really disappointing, and I think I agree that it's too early to completely give up hope, but hope is starting to wear thin.
Man, I was ready to put a fork in Mark Andrews. He looked dead halfway through the year, and then just resuscitated at the end. And now I think you want to put a fork in Mark Andrews' worm after that drop.
So they've actually talked a bit about it. Like Eric DeCosta's talked about Andrews, at the combine this week, and he's still going to be like a big part of this team next year. And I actually like if I had to bet on one player on the Ravens to lead the team in receiving touchdowns in 2025, it would still be Mark Andrews. For me, the big case against Andrews, he's tight end 6 in ECR. I do think that's too high. I think you guys are right to have him more in that 9 range. The case against him for me isn't the drop in the game against the Bills in the playoffs. It's Isaiah Likely. I just think Likely is so good that I want to see him get more and more usage, and I think he will continue to get more, and that's just naturally going to eat into Mark Andrews in terms of the volume. I still think he's going to be Lamar's favorite red zone target. I actually think definitively will be Mark Andrews for another season. I just worry about the yardage and the volume and the catches to have him ranked as highly as he is.
What do you think they're doing with the tight ends after 2025? Because I believe Andrews and Likely are both unrestricted free agents after this season.
The Ravens are a team that's willing to move on a year early rather than a year late. So I kind of anticipate an extension for Likely and thanking Mark Andrews for his service and saying you're going to be in the Ring of Honor one day, but we need to go in this other direction.
I also think Charlie Kolar is probably the best tight end 3 in the league.
Kolar's great. And I want to be clear, like I do know some people like that work with the Ravens that what I'm saying is not based on any inside knowledge. That's just me guessing, like as a fan. But that is my guess, is that it will be Likely moving forward after this year. I could be totally wrong. They love Mark Andrews, like the leader he is in the locker room, the guy he is, like has been for Lamar. Really the only like consistent pass catcher from day one to now with Lamar. Like they are not going to move on lightly from him. I think it's almost like a pun there, lightly and likely. I couldn't quite get there. But yeah, like I am with you I'm apprehensive about him as a dynasty asset because I worry that they're going to say Likely's just better and we can't keep him off the field for another season. He's just too good. So we'll see how that plays out. After that top 12, the next kind of names are, I would argue, far more uninspiring. Like for as much as I kind of made a joke about we can't talk about Kyle Pitts anymore, I don't know who else I would want to make a case for.
There's a reason why he's still in the top 12.
Exactly. Right. So the next game names, again, this is from your guys' rankings, not ECR. And part of the reasons I'm using your guys' average rankings is because some of these rookies are just artificially lower in ECR still. But the next names for you guys after tight end 12, Cole Kmet, Elijah Arroyo, Isaiah Likely, Harold Fannin Jr., Jonnu Smith, Jake Ferguson, Pat Freiermuth. I mean, stop me when there's a name you guys want to talk about, right? Like it just gets kind of, again, I'm not even going to say it's like terrible. Like Jonnu Smith had a great year last year, right? Like Harold Fannin had these great numbers at Bowling Green. Isaiah
Likely, all the same guy,
but it's
right?
It's uninspiring, right?
Yeah, I mean, I've got Jake Ferguson 13th in my dynasty rankings, and I've got Pat Freiermuth 25th. And I think there is almost no separation between those guys as far as how I feel about them. And there's a 12
and I have them
spot.
23 and 17 Fitz. So it's like, this is a big glob.
It is
of
a
guys
glob
that kind of can do the same stuff.
Absolute plateau in the rankings. I mean, the rookies, that's what's going to be interesting because there are a lot of good second tier. Obviously, Tyler Warren and Colston Loveland are the headliners, but like Harold Fannin had more catches and more receiving yards than Tyler Warren did last year, 117 and 1,500. And I know it was at Bowling Green, but like, who cares?
Right.
Who cares?
Like you don't need him to block in fantasy. You just need him to catch the football, and that's what he's going to do.
And the only thing is there are some guys in this rookie class like Fannin, like Aronde Gadsden Jr., who are Arroyo, Arroyo too, who they are not really, they don't have 3-down tight end weight. That's the thing. And if these guys are only, sort of move tight ends and they're only playing 50 or 60% of the snaps, they don't maybe have the upside that some of the 3-down tight ends do. And there are other 3-down tight ends too, like Mason Taylor, the son of former Dolphins edge rusher Jason Taylor, great prospect. Gunnar Helm, big dude. Hookem Hornsbogs, your guy. So this is a really fun tight end class, and I've got 6 or 7 of these guys in my top 30 among the rookies. Like last year we finally started to see a little more depth at the tight end position, and I think this rookie class is going to help continue to stock the pond.
Besides the rookies and besides Isaiah Likely, because we just kind of mentioned on why there's a chance he takes a big step forward. So besides Likely and the rookies, is there any name that you guys are looking at and saying, this is somebody I want to buy right now? Like you have all offseason, start wheeling and dealing. Is there a guy you want to buy right now, whether it's a buy low or a buy high in your mind?
I'm excited for Cole Kmet. Let's get Ben Johnson in there, right? Like Cole Kmet is such a good pass catching option. And you have Roma Dunze, Keenan Allen's gone from that kind of slot role. But you have Rome, you have DJ Moore, right? Like I think if you add a good running back in there, because we know DeAndre Swift kind of hasn't already worked with Ben Johnson. There's been some, what if they draft Genty, right? What if they move back and take a running back or take one in the second round? I just think that Cole Kmet could see a nice big uptick in a better offense and with Keenan Allen gone. So he's the guy that I'm kind of high on outside of the tippy top group.
Yeah. So,
Go ahead.
I mean, I think that was the right answer. Cole Kmet. A runner up, I'd maybe say Ben Sinnott for the
Yes.
Commanders. And the
Yes.
funny thing is, like at the end of the season, I know Zach Ertz was saying like how he wished he was in his early 20s again, so he could get to play his whole career, a big chunk of his career with Jayden Daniels again. Well, Ben Sinnott is in his early 20s and will get to play a big chunk of his early career with Jayden Daniels. He does have Zach Ertz in the way right now, and it looks like Ertz might wind up with the Commanders for like one more year, but Sinnott does have a pretty bright future, I think, even though he was kind of invisible as a rookie.
To read these names, kind of the last 10 to get us through tight end 30, Sinnott is in this group. It's Evan Ingram, Travis Kelce, Dallas Goedert, Noah Gray, Aranda Gadsden. Is it junior or is it the second? He's listed here as the second. I don't know which is the correct one. There is technically a difference though, right? It's like maybe the middle name's different. I can't remember the difference. I used to know it.
I got College Football Reference has got it as Aranda Gadsden the second.
Okay. I do think there is a difference, but somebody let me know in the comments what the reason is for that. If there is actually one or if they're just interchangeable. After that, Cade Otton, Ben Sinnott, Mason Taylor, Jatavian Sanders, and then Chig Okonkwo. So there, again, a lot of these names, it's like they are what they are. The one we have to talk about is Travis Kelce because he is officially coming back for another year. Somebody who I really don't know how I'm going to be ranking him in redraft leagues for this upcoming season. Obviously, somebody you only care about if you're in win now, but how valuable even is he in win now? Because coming back for another season, we kind of saw it this year. I would expect it to be more pronounced next year to feel like they're saving him for the playoffs. So is he somebody in Dynasty in win now that you would even be interested in, Boggs? He's 11th in ECR, by the way. Obviously, you guys have a much lower Fitz at 19th and you at 22nd. But if you were strictly win now, like I am all in on this year, is he somebody that you even want on your roster?
I think so. I think we'll see a bounce back, but I'm insanely high on Noah Gray because I think, we get this season from Kelce and then that is it. I don't think we get anything more. And, one injury from Kelce this year, and maybe we're moving on to Noah Gray. And this is a big, tight end for the Kansas City Chiefs is a big piece of that offense. We know the offense has been down, but like we talked about Patrick Mahomes before, like what if it ticks up, right? And that could be this year for Kelce and beyond for Noah Gray. So I think both these guys are kind of buys for me, specifically Gray. But I think Kelce's value right now is, as low as it's going to get before he retires. So I think he's pretty buyable right now. So yeah, I would see what the cost is at least.
And quickly, like scrolling through this list, Fitz, besides Kittle, who is 4 years younger than Kelce, I'm not even seeing anybody who's within 5.
He's the last player born in the 80s?
Yes, he's 89. So he's the only guy on this list born in the 80s. And I'm,
what about Ertz?
Kittle was born in 93.
90.
Like I'm not really seeing any 94s. There's a couple of guys born in 95. He's not just the oldest guy on this list. There's a gap.
Yeah. I feel like he's going to be one of the most frequently traded players in the run up to the 2025 season because no team that's in rebuild or retool mode should have Travis Kelce on the roster. And if you are a win now team with any sort of need at tight end, you should be absolutely trying to acquire Travis Kelce from a team that might not need him as much as you do. And just make it happen. Haggle, I don't think you should ever come to an impasse on Travis Kelce negotiations because it's so clear what sort of team he should be on in Dynasty and what sort of team he should not be on. Make it happen. Haggle it out, make it happen because we are talking about a player who's probably going to play one more year.
Is there anybody else that you guys wanted to hit on? I mean, we probably need to talk about Jake Briningstool. No, I'm just kidding. He's just the last name on this list. He's 77th in ECR right now. And I'm going to, hand up. I don't know who that is. I know I went to Clemson, but I couldn't tell you one thing about Jake Briningstool. But no, in all seriousness, of these other names, like whether it's somebody like Evan Ingram, who's obviously a veteran, or a rookie we haven't hit on yet, or just anybody else kind of on the back end of this list as kind of final thoughts on the tight end position. Is there anybody that you guys want to hit on, either of you?
Ingram's kind of an interesting case because he could potentially be quite valuable in 2025, but he could also be a cap casualty. That's something to
And I
watch
think
out
Brenton
for.
Strange is pretty good.
Yes.
So I think Brenton Strange is pretty good. I think there's some young guys that I would just like to see get on the field more. My boy Jayden Sanders from Carolina. I just like to
Theo Johnson, who like one of the most athletic tight end last year among the rookies. And I just didn't know if he could play because he never really did anything at Penn State in college. But like he actually had his moments for the Giants last year. It was just you didn't get a lot of them because of the quarterback situation.
I mean, a lot of the issues that you mentioned with Tyler Warren were also Drew Aller not playing well at quarterback before this year as well. So, and that was kind of what Theo Johnson was dealing with at Penn State. So a better pro than college player as well. And AJ Barner, I have him at 32, but he had a pretty nice end of the season in Seattle. It'd be nice to see, Noah Fant. I thought Noah Fant was going to be Noah Fant was the original Kyle Pitts to me because I thought he was going to be amazing, and he just did not pan out. He's gotten a little bit better, but now he's getting long in the tooth. And Barner looks so good at the end of the year. I wonder if he could push Fant to the bench. So that's a name that I just want to throw out.
Is there a final thought? Is there a landing spot you guys most want to see one of these high end rookies go to? Is it Denver? Is it the Chargers? Is it a different team that you guys most want to see one of these guys land in?
Yes and yes. But it would be interesting because I think like the Jets are in play for one of the tight ends at number 7, and they don't have the quarterback thing figured out lately. So not as sexy a landing spot maybe as the Broncos or Chargers would be, but you'd have to be pretty excited about one of the tight ends getting top 10 draft capital.
I'd like to see one of those guys end up in Denver. Warren or Loveland end up in Denver with Bo Nix, I think would be just so big for them to get that.
I think Tyler Warren in Denver would be.
You know what would be the wet blanket landing spot? I think the Colts at 14. Yeah,
yeah, we said it at the same time.
It would be, and like that, I have seen a lot of mocks that have Tyler Warren landing with the Colts at number 14.
Well, they tried to trade up to get Bowers last year, so like tight end. I think Jelani Woods, who I almost put in my top 40, I just couldn't work him in there coming off that huge injury, right? But I think that was kind of their plan, and he got hurt before the season started, and I don't know. They have their Mo Alley Cox has been there, I think, since 1992.
The tight end rotation they use with who are some of the
Ogletree and just all the same dudes, right? Like they're all the same guys. So to get one dude would be great, but if it's Anthony Richardson with how bad he was last year, maybe that's what makes Anthony Richardson good, though. You never know. The other options are amazing. Pittman and Downs and Alec Pierce played well, and they drafted Adonai Mitchell. Like they have JT. The weapons are amazing. It's finding that QB for the Colts that is, obviously evading them right now.
We'll wrap up there. Thanks everybody for tuning in. A little longer episode, but obviously we hit on a lot of names and in 2 different positions here. So those were our quarterback rankings for Dynasty and also tight end for Bogman and Fitz. I'm Ryan Wormeli. Thanks everybody for tuning in. Let us know in the comments if there was anybody who's ranking you really strongly disagree with, and let us know why. And be sure to check us out on Discord as well if you've got more questions about the guys we didn't have time to dive deep into. Again, for Boggs and Fitz, I'm Ryan. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you again next time.